It was a Friday evening when Detective Maya Rodriguez finally had some time to herself. After spending the entire week working on a complicated case at the FBI field office, she was exhausted. All she wanted was to pick up a new laptop for her daughter, who was preparing for college applications. Nothing fancy, just a quick stop at the electronics store on her way home. Maya pulled into the parking lot of Tech World, one of those big chain stores with bright lights and rows of gadgets. She was wearing her favorite comfortable clothes, jeans, and a navy blue hoodie, her hair pulled back in a simple ponytail. After years of wearing professional suits and carrying her badge everywhere, she loved these rare moments when she could just be a regular person doing regular things. The store was busy for a Friday night. Families browsed through the aisles. Couples debated over television screens and teenagers tested out the latest gaming systems. Maya made her way to the laptop section, already knowing what she needed. Her daughter had sent her a list of specifications, screen size, processor speed, all the technical details that made Maya's head spin a little. She started comparing different models, picking them up, checking the price tags, reading the features. A silver one caught her eye. It had everything her daughter needed and was within her budget. She opened it up to check the keyboard, making sure it felt right. That's when she noticed him. A security guard was standing about 20 feet away, his eyes locked on her. He wasn't just glancing in her direction like security guards normally do. He was staring, his arms crossed, his body language tense. Maya had been a federal agent for over 12 years. She knew how to read people, and this man was watching her like she was about to commit a crime. She tried to ignore it. This wasn't the first time something like this had happened, and it probably wouldn't be the last. Maya had experienced this uncomfortable feeling more times than she could count. The extra attention, the suspicious looks, the assumption that she didn't belong in certain places. It was exhausting, but she had learned to deal with it. She continued examining the laptop, testing the trackpad, checking the ports. The security guard moved closer. Now he was just one aisle away, pretending to look at something on a shelf but clearly focused on her. Maya took a deep breath and reminded herself to stay calm. She was here to buy a laptop, nothing more. She picked up another model, this time a black one with a bigger screen. It was more expensive, but it had better graphics, which her daughter would need for her design classes. The security guard was now standing right behind her. She could feel his presence, that uncomfortable sensation of being watched too closely. Maya turned around and gave him a polite smile. "Can I help you with something?" she asked, her tone friendly but firm. The guard looked surprised that she had addressed him directly. He was a tall man, probably in his late 40s, with a thick mustache and a name tag that read Stevens. He uncrossed his arms and put on what seemed like a forced professional expression. "Just checking if you need any help, ma'am," he said, though his tone suggested something else entirely. "I'm fine, thank you. Just looking for a laptop," Maya replied. "These are pretty expensive items," Stevens said, gesturing toward the laptops. "We have some more affordable options in the back if you want to see those instead." There it was. The assumption, the judgment. Maya felt a familiar anger rising in her chest, but she kept her face neutral. She had dealt with people like this her whole life, even more so in her line of work where she constantly had to prove herself in a male-dominated field. "I'm looking at exactly what I need." "Thanks," Maya said, turning back to the laptops. Stevens didn't leave. He stood there just a few feet away, making his presence known. Other customers in the store were starting to notice. A woman with 2 kids glanced over, looking confused by the security guard's behavior. An elderly man shook his head slightly, as if he knew exactly what was happening. Maya tried to focus on her task. She had narrowed it down to 2 laptops. Both had good reviews online. Both had the specs her daughter needed. She was leaning toward the more expensive one because it came with better warranty coverage. She picked it up again, feeling its weight, imagining her daughter's face when she brought it home. "Ma'am, I'm going to need to see your receipt," Stevens said suddenly. Maya turned around, confused. "Receipt for what?" "I haven't purchased anything yet. Store policy. If you're handling merchandise, we need to verify you're not trying to walk out with it." "I'm shopping." That's literally what people do in stores. They look at products before buying them. Stevens took a step closer. "I've been watching you for the past 10 minutes. You've been acting suspicious." "Suspicious?" Maya couldn't help but let some frustration show in her voice. "I've been looking at laptops like everyone else in this store. A small crowd was starting to form. People were slowing down as they walked past, sensing the tension. Maya noticed a young couple whispering to each other, their phones now in their hands. A teenager had his camera pointed in their direction. Stevens reached for the radio on his belt. "We might have a situation here," he said into it, his eyes never leaving Maya. "There's no situation," Maya said firmly. "I'm a customer trying to make a purchase. That's all." But Stevens had already made up his mind about who she was and what she was doing. Maya could see it in his eyes, that certainty, that bias that no amount of reasoning could change. She had encountered this before in her work. People who had decided someone was guilty before knowing any facts. "I'm calling the police," Stevens announced loudly, making sure everyone nearby could hear him. Maya felt her heart sink. This was escalating in exactly the way she had hoped it wouldn't. She thought about pulling out her badge right then, showing him who she really was, watching the shock spread across his face. But something stopped her. Maybe it was pride, or maybe it was the desire to be treated like a normal person for once, to shop without having to prove her worth or her identity. "You're calling the police because I'm shopping?" Maya asked, her voice calm but her hands slightly shaking. "You do realize how this looks, right?" Stevens ignored her question. He was already speaking into his radio again, requesting police presence at Tech World. Maya stood there, the laptop still in her hands, surrounded by curious onlookers, security cameras recording everything, and the terrible knowledge that her simple Friday evening shopping trip had just turned into something much bigger. She placed the laptop carefully back on the display table and crossed her arms, preparing herself for what was about to come. In all her years as an FBI agent, she had never imagined she would find herself in a situation like this. But here she was, being treated like a criminal in a place where she had every right to be. The automatic doors at the front of the store slid open. A police officer walked in, his hand resting on his belt, his eyes scanning the store until they landed on Maya. Stevens pointed in her direction, and the officer began walking toward them. The officer who walked through those doors was exactly the type Maya had encountered too many times in her career. He was tall, built like someone who spent serious time at the gym, with a buzz cut and a face that showed no warmth. His name tag read Mitchell, and he carried himself with the kind of confidence that often crossed the line into arrogance. Mitchell approached with heavy footsteps, his boots echoing on the store's tile floor. Every eye in that section of the store was now watching. Parents had pulled their children closer. The teenage boy with his phone was definitely recording now. Maya could see at least 3 other people with their cameras out too. "This the one?" Mitchell asked Stevens, not even looking at Maya yet. "Yes, sir, officer. She's been acting real suspicious, handling expensive merchandise, and she refused to cooperate when I asked for identification." Maya's eyebrows shot up. "That's not what happened. I never refused anything. I told you I was shopping and hadn't made a purchase yet." Mitchell finally turned to look at her, his eyes scanning her from head to toe in a way that made Maya's skin crawl. It was the look of someone who had already made every assumption about who she was and why she was there. "Ma'am, the security guard here says you've been causing problems," Mitchell said, his hand resting on his belt near his weapon. It was a subtle intimidation tactic, one Maya recognized from her training. "The only problem here is that I'm being harassed for shopping while black," Maya said clearly, making sure her voice carried. She wanted everyone listening to understand exactly what was happening. Mitchell's jaw tightened. "Don't make this about race. This is about suspicious behavior." "What suspicious behavior? Please tell me exactly what I did that was suspicious." "You were handling expensive items, moving around the store erratically, and acting nervous." Maya almost laughed at the absurdity. "I was comparing laptops. That's what people do when they shop. And I wasn't nervous until your security guard started stalking me." A woman in the crowd spoke up. "Officer, I've been shopping here for the last 20 minutes. That lady hasn't done anything wrong. She's just been looking at computers like everyone else." Mitchell shot the woman a look that made her step back. "Ma'am, I need you to stay out of this." The elderly man Maya had noticed earlier also spoke up. "This is ridiculous. She's clearly just shopping. I saw the whole thing." "Everyone needs to back up and mind their own business," Mitchell said loudly, his voice taking on an aggressive edge. "This is police business now." Maya felt the situation spiraling out of control. In her years with the FBI, she had studied cases like this, situations where bias and ego turned simple encounters into tragedies. She knew the statistics, knew the stories, knew how quickly things could go wrong. Officer Mitchell, Maya said, keeping her voice as calm and professional as possible. I understand there's been some confusion here. I'm happy to show you my ID and my credit cards. I'm happy to complete my purchase right now and resolve this peacefully. I need you to step outside with me, Mitchell said, reaching for her arm. Maya pulled back instinctively. Don't touch me. I haven't done anything wrong. I'm a paying customer in this store. You're refusing to cooperate with a police officer, Mitchell said, his voice rising. That's obstruction. I'm not refusing anything. I'm asking you to explain what law I've broken that requires me to go anywhere with you. The store manager had finally appeared, a nervous-looking man in his 30s who clearly had no idea how to handle what was happening in his store. He approached cautiously, wringing his hands. Officer, perhaps we can all just calm down and figure this out, the manager said weakly. Sir, I need you to provide security footage from the last 15 minutes, Mitchell demanded. Of course, the manager stammered. But I should mention, our cameras show that the lady has been shopping normally. She hasn't tried to conceal anything or leave with any merchandise. Mitchell ignored him. He turned back to Maya, and she could see something dangerous in his eyes now. His authority had been challenged in front of a crowd, and he wasn't going to let it go. Ma'am, I'm asking you one last time. Step outside with me so we can sort this out, or I'll have to arrest you for obstruction and disorderly conduct. Maya's mind was racing. She thought about her badge sitting in her car, locked in the glove compartment. She thought about her FBI credentials and her wallet in her back pocket. She thought about her daughter waiting at home, expecting her mom to come back with a new laptop, not from a police station or worse. I want to speak to your supervisor, Maya said firmly. You'll speak to whoever I tell you to speak to, Mitchell shot back. Now move. He reached for her arm again, and this time his grip was tight, his fingers digging into her bicep. Maya tried to pull away, but he held on, starting to pull her toward the door. Let go of me, Maya said loudly. You're hurting me. Several people in the crowd gasped. The woman who had spoken up earlier had her phone out now too, recording everything. The store manager looked like he wanted to disappear into the floor. Officer, please. This isn't necessary, the manager tried again. Maya's training told her to stay calm, to not escalate, to comply and sort it out later. But her dignity, her rights, her exhaustion with being treated this way her entire life made her stand her ground. I'm not going anywhere until you tell me what crime I've committed, Maya said, planting her feet. Mitchell's face was red now. He called into his radio. I need backup at Tech World. I have an uncooperative suspect refusing lawful orders. Suspect? Maya couldn't believe what she was hearing. Suspect of what exactly? Attempted theft, obstruction of justice, and resisting arrest. I haven't stolen anything. The merchandise is right there on the table. Your own store manager just confirmed I haven't done anything wrong. But Mitchell wasn't listening anymore. He was in full enforcement mode, his ego and authority wrapped up in subduing this woman who dared to question him. He grabbed his handcuffs from his belt. Turn around and put your hands behind your back, he ordered. This is insane, Maya said. But she was genuinely frightened now. She had seen how these situations could end. She had worked cases where a simple stop turned deadly because someone reached for their wallet or moved the wrong way. I said, turn around. Maya slowly started to turn, her hands beginning to rise when she remembered her phone in her hoodie pocket. She needed to document this, needed evidence of what was happening. She reached toward her pocket, her fingers just touching the edge of her phone. That's when everything changed. Mitchell saw her hand moving toward her pocket, and his training, mixed with his assumptions and adrenaline, triggered the worst possible response. His hand flew to his weapon, and before Maya could even process what was happening, she was staring down the barrel of a gun. Gun! She's reaching for a weapon, Mitchell shouted, though Maya's phone was clearly visible in her hand now. The store erupted in screams. People dropped to the floor. The manager dove behind a counter, and Maya stood frozen, her heart pounding so hard she thought it might explode, looking at the weapon pointed directly at her face, knowing that her life had just been reduced to this single, terrifying moment. Time seemed to stop completely. Maya could hear her own heartbeat pounding in her ears, drowning out the screams and chaos around her. The gun barrel looked impossibly large from where she stood, a dark circle that represented the thin line between life and death. Her phone was still in her hand, held up where everyone could see it, but Mitchell's finger was on the trigger and his eyes showed no recognition of his mistake. It's a phone, Someone in the crowd screamed. She just has a phone. But Mitchell was beyond hearing. His hands were shaking, his breathing rapid, his entire body locked in fight mode. Maya had seen this before in training videos, in case studies, in the tragic stories that made headlines. An officer who had convinced himself of a threat, whose bias and fear had created a narrative that didn't match reality. "Don't move," Mitchell shouted, his voice cracking. "Don't you move!" Maya's arms were up now, her phone clearly visible, no threat to anyone. But she knew that didn't matter. She had studied enough cases to know that logic disappeared in moments like these. Everything she had learned in 12 years as a federal agent, all her training in de-escalation and crisis management, came flooding back. "Officer," Maya said, her voice surprisingly steady despite the terror coursing through her body. "I am not armed. This is a cell phone. I am a federal agent. My credentials are in my back pocket. I am not a threat to you or anyone here." "Shut up," Mitchell yelled. "Get on the ground. Get on the ground now." Maya slowly started to lower herself, her movements deliberate and careful. Every action could be misinterpreted. Every gesture could be seen as aggressive. She had to stay alive, had to get through this moment, had to make it home to her daughter. "I'm getting on the ground," Maya said clearly, speaking for the witnesses, for the cameras, for the record. "I am cooperating fully. I am unarmed. I am not resisting." The cold tile floor pressed against her knees as she knelt down. The humiliation of it burned through her, but the fear was stronger. She placed her phone on the floor beside her and put her hands behind her head. Fingers interlaced just like she had been trained to do, just like she had trained others to do. But she was on the wrong side of this encounter now. Mitchell moved behind her, the gun still drawn. She could hear his ragged breathing, could feel his presence like a weight pressing down on her. Then came the metallic click of handcuffs, cold steel closing around her wrists, tightening until they bit into her skin. "You're making a serious mistake," Maya said, her face pressed against the floor, tasting dust and shame. "I'm Special Agent Maya Rodriguez with the FBI. My badge and credentials are in my wallet. You need to check my identification." "Yeah, right," Mitchell said, yanking the cuffs tighter. "And I'm the president. You people always have some story." Those words hit Maya like a physical blow. "You people." There it was, the ugly truth laid bare for everyone to hear. This wasn't about suspicious behavior or store policy or legitimate law enforcement. This was about who she was, what she looked like, the assumptions that had been made about her the moment Mitchell walked through those doors. Another officer arrived, responding to Mitchell's backup call. This one was younger, looked barely old enough to be out of the academy. His name tag read Chen, and his eyes went wide when he saw Maya handcuffed on the floor with Mitchell standing over her, gun still drawn. "What's the situation?" Chen asked, looking confused at the scene before him. "Attempted theft? Resisting arrest, and she reached for what I believed was a weapon," Mitchell said, finally holstering his gun but keeping his boot near Maya's shoulder, a show of dominance that made her stomach turn. "It was a phone," the store manager said quietly, finding his courage now that the immediate danger had passed. "Sir, it was clearly a cell phone. And our cameras will show she didn't steal anything or resist. She was just shopping." Mitchell shot the manager a look that could freeze fire. "Are you questioning my judgment?" "No, sir, I'm just saying what I saw." The woman who had spoken up earlier stepped forward, her phone still recording. "This is wrong. Everyone here saw what happened. She didn't do anything. This is racial profiling and police brutality. And I've got it all on video, ma'am. You need to step back and put that phone away, or you'll be arrested for interfering with an investigation," Mitchell threatened. "I'm a citizen documenting a public incident," the woman said firmly. "I have every right to record this." Maya felt a small spark of hope. There were witnesses, multiple recordings, evidence of what was really happening. But right now, in this moment, she was still face down on a dirty floor, handcuffed like a criminal, stripped of her dignity in front of dozens of strangers. "Check my wallet," Maya said again, louder this time. "I'm telling you, I'm a federal agent. My credentials are in my back pocket. Just look." Mitchell laughed, a harsh sound with no humor in it. "Nice try. I've heard every excuse in the book." Officer Chen looked uncomfortable. "Maybe we should check her ID, just to be thorough." "Don't tell me how to do my job, rookie," Mitchell snapped. But Chen persisted. "It's standard procedure. And if there's any chance she's telling the truth, we need to verify it. Mitchell hesitated. Maya could feel the shift in his demeanor, the first crack in his certainty. Around them, the crowd had grown larger. More phones were out. The store manager was on his phone with someone, probably corporate headquarters or a lawyer. This was becoming a public incident, and even Mitchell had to recognize the implications. Fine, Mitchell said finally. He roughly patted down Maya's pockets, treating her like a suspect rather than a human being. His hands found her wallet, pulled it out, flipped it open. Then came the silence. It was the kind of silence that fills a space when everyone knows something significant has just happened. Maya couldn't see Mitchell's face, but she could imagine it. The color draining away, the realization hitting him like a truck, the understanding of just how badly he had messed up. "Oh no," she heard Chen whisper. Mitchell's hands were shaking as he held the wallet. Inside was her FBI badge, gold and unmistakable, and her credential card with her photo and the official seal of the Federal Bureau of Investigation. Special Agent Maya Rodriguez, Civil Rights Division. 12 years of service, multiple commendations, a career dedicated to investigating exactly the kind of behavior Mitchell had just displayed. "Get these cuffs off her," Chen said urgently. "Now." Mitchell seemed frozen, unable to process what he was seeing. Chen pushed past him and knelt beside Maya, his hands fumbling with the handcuff keys. "Ma'am, I am so sorry. This is a terrible mistake. We're removing the cuffs immediately." The metal released from Maya's wrists, and she felt blood rushing back into her hands. Chen helped her sit up, his young face full of genuine concern and horror at what had just transpired. Maya rubbed her wrists, feeling the deep marks the cuffs had left, evidence that would last for days. Mitchell was still standing there, the wallet open in his hands, staring at the badge like it might bite him. His face had gone from red to pale white. He was finally understanding the magnitude of what he had done. He hadn't just harassed a random shopper. He had drawn his weapon on a federal agent, handcuffed her without cause, and humiliated her in front of witnesses and cameras. Maya slowly got to her feet, her legs shaky but her resolve hardening with every second. She took her wallet back from Mitchell's trembling hands and looked him directly in the eyes. "I told you who I was," Maya said quietly, but her voice carried through the silent store. "I told you multiple times, but you didn't listen. You didn't check. You didn't care. Do you know why?" Mitchell opened his mouth, but no words came out. "Because you had already decided who I was based on how I look," Maya continued. "And that badge, that authority you carry, you used it as a weapon against an innocent person. Against someone who has dedicated her life to protecting civil rights and fighting exactly this kind of injustice." Phones were still recording. Witnesses were still watching. And somewhere in that moment, Maya made a decision. This wouldn't end here. Maya stood in the middle of that electronics store, surrounded by strangers who had witnessed her humiliation, facing an officer who had treated her like a criminal. Her wrists still throbbed from the handcuffs. Her knees hurt from being forced to the ground. But more than any physical pain, it was the emotional weight that pressed down on her chest, making it hard to breathe. Mitchell finally found his voice. "Agent Rodriguez, I apologize. This was a misunderstanding. We received a report of suspicious activity and I was just doing my job." "Doing your job?" Maya repeated, her voice sharp enough to cut glass. "Your job is to draw a weapon on an unarmed woman who's shopping. Your job is to ignore witness statements and store security. Your job is to refuse to check someone's identification when they tell you repeatedly they're a federal agent." Chen stepped back, clearly wanting no part of this confrontation. The crowd had grown even larger now, people from other parts of the store drawn by the commotion. The teenage boy who had been recording from the beginning was still filming, his phone steady in his hands. "I made a judgment call based on the information I had," Mitchell said, but his voice lacked conviction. He knew he was wrong. Everyone knew he was wrong. "The information you had?" Maya's anger was rising now, breaking through the professional composure she had tried so hard to maintain. "What information was that exactly?" "That I'm a black woman in a nice store? That I was looking at expensive electronics? Tell me, Officer Mitchell, would you have done this to any of the white customers in this store doing the exact same thing I was doing?" Mitchell's silence was answer enough. The woman who had spoken up earlier approached cautiously. "Ma'am, I just want you to know that I recorded everything. From the moment that security guard started following you to right now. If you need it, I'll send it to you. I'll testify to what I saw." This was wrong on every level. Thank you, Maya said, her voice softening slightly. I appreciate that. Can you send the video to this email? She pulled out her phone, the same phone that Mitchell had mistaken for a weapon, and gave the woman her contact information. Me too, said the elderly man. I got most of it on video. And I'm a retired attorney. I know police misconduct when I see it. Others stepped forward, offering their videos, their witness statements, their support. Maya realized that despite the horror of what had just happened, there was something powerful happening here too. People were standing up, refusing to stay silent, documenting injustice when they saw it. The store manager was on the phone again, and from the snippets Maya could hear, he was talking to corporate lawyers. The company would probably try to distance themselves from this, maybe fire the security guard, definitely update their policies. But Maya knew that wasn't enough. This wasn't just about one overzealous security guard or one biased police officer. This was about a system that allowed these things to keep happening. Mitchell's radio crackled to life. Unit 47, what's your status? Do you need additional backup? Mitchell grabbed his radio, his hand still shaking. Negative. Situation is under control. False alarm. False alarm? Maya couldn't believe what she was hearing. Is that what you're calling this? A false alarm? Agent Rodriguez, please, let's not make this bigger than it needs to be, Mitchell said, his voice taking on a pleading tone. Mistakes happen. I'm sure we can work this out professionally. Maya stared at him, understanding exactly what he was trying to do. He wanted her to let it go, to walk away, to make this problem disappear quietly. It was the same thing that happened in countless cases like this. The victim was expected to be gracious, to accept an apology, to move on so everyone else could feel comfortable again. Work this out professionally? Maya said slowly. You mean sweep it under the rug? Pretend it didn't happen? Let you go back to your patrol like nothing's wrong? I'm willing to write a formal apology, Mitchell offered. And maybe we can chalk this up to a communication breakdown. Chen looked like he wanted to disappear into the floor. Several people in the crowd were shaking their heads. The woman with the video was recording Mitchell's pathetic attempts to minimize what he had done. Maya took a deep breath, trying to organize her thoughts. She was exhausted, traumatized, angry, and hurt. But she was also an FBI agent who had spent over a decade investigating civil rights violations. She knew exactly what needed to happen next. Here's what's going to happen, Maya said, her voice clear and authoritative. I'm going to walk out of this store. I'm going home to my daughter, who was expecting me back an hour ago with a laptop for her college applications. Tomorrow, I'm going to contact my supervisor at the FBI. I'm going to file a formal complaint with your department, and I'm going to request that the Civil Rights Division open an investigation into your conduct and the policies of this police department. Mitchell's face went pale again. That's not necessary. We can handle this internally. Oh, it's absolutely necessary, Maya said. Because if this happened to me, a federal agent with a badge and credentials, someone who knows her rights and has the resources to fight back, imagine what happens to ordinary people every single day. People who don't have my training or my position. People who are too scared to speak up or don't know how to file complaints. People whose videos and witness statements get ignored. She turned to address the crowd that had gathered. I want to thank all of you for speaking up, for recording, for being willing to testify to the truth. Your actions today matter more than you know. This kind of thing happens all the time, but usually there's no one brave enough to document it, no one willing to stand up and say it's wrong. The elderly retired attorney spoke up. Agent Rodriguez, I'd like to offer my services if you need legal counsel or support. What happened here today is unacceptable, and I've seen too many cases like this swept aside. I appreciate that, sir, Maya said. I'll definitely be in touch. Mitchell tried one more time. Agent Rodriguez, I really think we can resolve this without involving headquarters or the FBI. Think about both of our careers here. Maya turned to look at him, and there was steel in her eyes. My career is built on fighting for justice and protecting civil rights. Your career should not exist if this is how you use your authority. And frankly, Officer Mitchell, I'm more worried about the careers and lives of every person of color in this community who might encounter you when I'm not around to document it. She turned to the store manager. I want copies of all security footage from today. Every camera angle. I want it preserved and provided to the FBI by Monday morning. If any of that footage mysteriously disappears or gets erased, That's destruction of evidence and I will pursue charges. Is that understood? The manager nodded frantically. Yes, ma'am, absolutely. I'll personally ensure all footage is backed up and sent to your office. Maya picked up her phone and called her supervisor. It was after hours, but this couldn't wait. The phone rang twice before a gruff voice answered. Director Wilson, Maya said. This is Rodriguez. I need to report an incident. I was racially profiled and had a weapon drawn on me by a local police officer while shopping. I'm unharmed, but we have multiple witnesses and video evidence. I think the Civil Rights Division needs to look into this department's practices. She could hear her supervisor's sharp intake of breath. Are you okay, Maya? Where are you right now? I'm still at the scene. Tech World on Riverside Drive. The officer is still here. I have his badge number and information. Stay there. I'm sending agents to document everything and get official statements. Don't leave until they arrive, and Maya, I'm sorry this happened to you. We'll handle this the right way. Maya hung up and looked around the store. Mitchell looked like he might be sick. Chen was talking quietly into his radio. The crowd was beginning to disperse, though many people were still recording on their phones. The videos were probably already online, being shared, going viral. This moment, this terrible, humiliating, frightening moment, was about to become something much larger, and Maya knew that whatever happened next would be difficult and painful. There would be investigations and interviews and reports. There would be people who would try to discredit her or claim she was overreacting. There would be those who would defend Mitchell or argue that he was just doing his job. But there would also be change. There had to be, because Maya refused to accept a world where this was normal, where this was okay, where this could just be brushed aside and forgotten. Maya didn't go home that night until nearly midnight. 2 FBI agents arrived within 30 minutes of her call, and they spent hours documenting everything. They interviewed witnesses, collected video footage from phones and store cameras, took photographs of the marks on Maya's wrists, and recorded official statements from everyone involved. Mitchell and Stevens both had to give their accounts, and watching them try to justify their actions was almost painful to witness. When Maya finally walked through her front door, her daughter was waiting up, curled on the couch with her laptop balanced on her knees. The moment she saw her mother's face, she knew something was wrong. Mom, what happened? Maya sat down beside her daughter and told her everything. She didn't sugarcoat it or try to make it easier. Her daughter was 17, old enough to understand the world they lived in, old enough to know that even her mother's FBI badge couldn't always protect her from bias and hatred. They held each other and cried. Then her daughter said something that stuck with Maya through everything that followed. You have to make sure this means something. Mom, you have to make sure it changes things. That became Maya's mission. The next morning, despite it being Saturday, Maya was at the FBI field office writing her official report. Every detail, every moment, every word that was spoken. Her supervisor, Director Wilson, read it with growing anger, his jaw clenched tight. This is unacceptable, he said finally. We're opening a full investigation, not just into Mitchell, but into the entire department's practices and training protocols. The story broke on Sunday. The videos from the store had gone viral, shared millions of times across social media. News outlets picked it up immediately. By Monday morning, it was national news. FBI agent held at gunpoint while shopping was the headline that appeared everywhere. Maya's phone didn't stop ringing. Interview requests from every major news network. Messages of support from colleagues and strangers. And unfortunately, hateful messages from people who thought she was making too big a deal out of nothing, or who questioned whether she had really been innocent. The police department released a statement saying they were looking into the matter and that Mitchell had been placed on administrative leave pending investigation. It was the standard response, the kind of thing that usually made problems go away quietly. But this wasn't going away quietly. The woman from the store, whose name Maya learned was Patricia, organized a community meeting. Over 300 people showed up. They shared their own stories of being profiled, being followed in stores, being stopped by police for no reason. Maya sat in that crowded community center and listened to story after story, each one a reminder that her experience wasn't unique. It was painfully common. We need to demand better, Patricia said, standing at the front of the room. We need accountability. We need training. We need policies that protect all of us, not just some of us. The retired attorney, whose name was Theodore Chen, helped organize legal support. He connected Maya with civil rights attorneys and helped several other community members who wanted to file complaints about their own experiences with the police department. 2 weeks after the incident, Maya held a press conference. She stood at a podium with microphones from dozens of news outlets pointed at her, cameras recording every word. Her hands shook slightly, but her voice was steady. "What happened to me at that store could have ended very differently," she began. "Officer Mitchell drew his weapon on me because he made assumptions based on how I look. He refused to check my credentials because he had already decided who I was. If I had moved the wrong way, if I had panicked, if any number of things had gone differently, I might not be standing here today." She paused, looking directly at the cameras. "But I'm one of the lucky ones. I have resources, I have training, I have institutional support. What about the people who don't? What about the teenager buying snacks at a convenience store? What about the father driving home from work? What about all the people who experience this kind of treatment every day, but don't have a platform to speak out?" The press conference was watched by millions. It sparked conversations across the country about racial profiling, police training, and accountability. Some praised Maya for speaking out. Others criticized her, accused her of playing the race card, said she should have just shown her badge immediately. But the investigation continued. The FBI's Civil Rights Division discovered that Officer Mitchell had a history of complaints. 15 formal complaints in 8 years, mostly from people of color, alleging excessive force, verbal abuse, and racial profiling. None of them had resulted in serious disciplinary action. The department had protected him, moved him to different precincts, given him verbal warnings that meant nothing. The department's training records showed that bias training was minimal, just a few hours every couple of years. Use of force policies had loopholes big enough to drive a truck through. There was no real accountability system, no civilian oversight, no consequences for officers who violated people's rights. 3 months after the incident, the findings were made public. The FBI recommended that the police department enter into a consent decree, a legally binding agreement requiring comprehensive reforms. The Department of Justice agreed and filed a lawsuit to force compliance. Officer Mitchell was fired and faced federal charges for violating Maya's civil rights. The security guard Stevens lost his job. The police chief announced his resignation under pressure. It wasn't enough to fix everything, but it was a start. The real change came slowly, piece by piece. The department implemented new training programs focusing on de-escalation and implicit bias. They established a civilian review board with real authority to investigate complaints. They required body cameras for all officers. They created new policies for interactions with the public that emphasized respect and accountability. Maya became a frequent speaker at police academies and community events. She shared her story not for sympathy, but as a teaching tool. She helped develop training programs that used her case as an example of what not to do, of how bias and assumptions could turn a routine interaction into a civil rights violation. 6 months after that Friday evening in the electronics store, Maya received a letter from a young woman named Jasmine. Jasmine wrote that she had been profiled in a store in the same town, but because of the changes that followed Maya's case, the officer who responded actually listened to her, checked the security footage, apologized to her, and escorted her safely from the store. The security guard who had profiled her was immediately fired based on the new policies. "Your courage changed things for me," Jasmine wrote. "I wanted you to know that." Maya kept that letter on her desk at work. On hard days when she felt exhausted or wondered if speaking out had been worth it, she would read it again. She finally bought her daughter that laptop from a different store in a different town. They joked nervously about it, but the fear was real. The trauma didn't just disappear because justice was served, but Maya also saw the impact of what had happened. Other communities used her case as a model for demanding change in their own police departments. Training programs across the country started using the video footage and documentation from her case to teach officers about bias and proper procedures. A year later, Maya was promoted to lead a new task force focused on police accountability and civil rights enforcement. Her team investigated cases across the country, helping communities demand better from their law enforcement agencies. She thought about that Friday evening often. The fear, the humiliation, the anger. But she also thought about Patricia organizing that community meeting, about Theodore offering his legal expertise, About all those witnesses who refused to stay silent. About Jasmine's letter. About the changes that rippled outward from one terrible moment. Her daughter was right. Maya had made sure it meant something. She had turned her pain into purpose, her trauma into transformation. The work wasn't finished, probably would never be finished. But it was happening. And on the hardest days when Maya wondered if it was all worth it, she reminded herself of something simple but powerful. Because she spoke up, because she demanded accountability, because she refused to let it be swept aside, someone else was safer. Someone else was treated with dignity. Someone else made it home to their family. That was worth everything.